let's move on to our next panelist, Chanel Daniels. She will be speaking on Talk to Learn, Unlocking the Power of Conversational Learning and exploring how conversational learning can help individuals grow. So let me give Chanel Daniels the floor.
My name is Chanel Daniels, and today's topic is about conversational learning and the power of dialogue and peer learning. And let me start off by asking a relatable question. How many of us had that aha moment? Like when you're speaking with a friend or a colleague or a classmate and they're discussing group projects and the way they're explaining it to you, it may involve gestures, relatable communication, and you're like, wow, I get it. And you understand it a lot more different than you would have if you were reading a book or looking through articles or journals or things like that. But in some conversations with someone else, it's almost like a light bulb goes off. So a little bit about me. As someone who has worked in grant compliance, policy, and most importantly, I'm studying contract law right now in preparation for law school, and I am aware of how quickly I can learn information when I'm talking out loud and I'm absorbing these ideas, or when I'm working with my material in group sessions, or if I have someone that's there that's helping me study along the way. I actually gain more information when I'm speaking with someone, when I'm engaging in conversation. So I know that that's a technique for me, especially when studying contract law, because it's a completely different language. And if you don't understand how the legal system operates when you're learning about contract law, it's very hard to absorb the information. So it's really good sometimes when you're speaking with, maybe more intimate settings, one-on-one conversations, and things like that can actually help retain the information. So what is conversational learning? When I say conversational learning, I don't just mean small talk. It's about turning passive information into active knowledge. It happens in two ways. Through dialogue-based platforms like study groups or even AI tutors can help immensely. And through informal peer learning. That's like I explained to you, when a colleague or a classmate or a friend explains something in plain language. And in plain language, it just basically just means how you interpret information. Do you need gestures? Would you understand better if there were proctors or just anything like that will help aid when it comes to absorbing the information and retaining it as well? So in the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about why this works. And these are the three key elements as I explained prior. Let's talk about this method and how it works. First, it builds confidence. You validate your knowledge by saying it out loud. I know that works for me. And second, it creates clarity. It explains, enforcing, simplifies, and listening, and it shows you a new perspective on how to just pretty much view information. And third, it boosts retention in conversations, especially when you tie it to the story and example, and it makes the learning experience a lot better. And I know, studying contract law, that I can actually take real life information and relate it to the material that I'm currently studying. And that's also what helps me retain information as well. So when I'm studying, I'm able to say, oh, okay, wow, I get this. I had this experience as well. And so in terms of confidence grows when people have a chance to test their knowledge in conversation. For example, most of my undergrad study consists of presentations. I felt more secure discussing the assignments with my group. That way it allowed me to engage in constructive feedback and learn pretty much learn new ways of learning. And that's when it made me feel really secure when it was time to present while I'm home and I'm working, because I currently work from home as well. So I usually have my daughter review the material. I do a test run quite a few times, and I really strongly believe that it should be repeated multiple times. You should continuously study the material so that way when it's time to present or it's time to engage in certain conversation, even if it's with interviews, that's going to help build that confidence. So it's very, very important to speak with someone that's able to give you that constructive feedback, positive reinforcement, or anything that you may need. So that way, like I mentioned, you'll be ready to present. Concept clarity. So what happens when we explain, I'll be honest, while preparing for law school exams, I basically felt like, how can I get this information to stick, right? I often learn faster when explaining rules to peers than when reading the cases. And talking out loud, as I mentioned prior, a lot of these things sometimes is going to seem like a repeat because they all pretty much tie in together. But talking out loud is very important. However, if you choose to take your exam or if you're studying for a piece of material and it requires for you to have a proctor, talking out loud, I had to learn the hard way that is actually a violation against proctor rules. So I would not recommend talking out loud. But a person that speaks out loud, such as myself, I'm able to retain information. I'm able to process. Basically, it's just how my process system works. But in some cases, when you're using a proctor, I would really, really highly recommend that if you need to be able to speak out loud, when studying your material, it's better to go into a testing center or something like that, or just practice saying it to yourself. And that's pretty much what I did. I started practicing saying it to myself because it's just the way my process system works when it comes to clarity and retaining information as well. But those are some of the risks that comes with talking out loud. So just be mindful of that if that is one of your techniques that you use. And so the next slide we're going to talk a little bit about is retention. Stories and conversation does help improve memory, dialogue that ties into your knowledge experience, and a manual fades. And that's how the conversation basically sticks, Retention comes from making connections. When we remember to talk about, especially when it ties into stories and interactive examples and a manual fade, that's when it helps build conversation. So retention is important. And as I mentioned in the previous slides as well, just repeat, practice. You can also use other types of aids. You can use some examples. Recording, right? You can, if you have a recorder on your computer, or you can also use your audio. These are techniques and electronic technologies that you can use that can help as well. So if you're studying alone and you don't have the convenience to have someone help you through your process, then you can always create an audio. You can always use other types of tools like recording yourself, which is so important. And then you'll be able to go back and listen and say, okay, all right, I see exactly where I need to work on, what mistakes occurred during my test run, and just pretty much continue to practice until you'll be able to retain that information firsthand. So real world applications. So you'll see a conversational learning everywhere, right? It's in education, it's when tutoring, study circles, and workplace through mentoring and peer shadowing. In technology, where conversations like AI makes training interactive. As I mentioned, everything ties together. These are real world applications when mentoring and shadowing and compliance discussions, technology, interactive training. These things will help you in real world experiences when it comes to learning and having conversation. Call to action. So if we want to accelerate learning, we need spaces where people don't just consume information. They talk it out loud. So here's my challenge. The next time you learn something new, try teaching or discussing it with someone else. You'll be amazed at how much more the information sticks. because conversations just is not about sharing information. It creates transformation. It creates a space where everyone is learning. Everyone is learning. We're all interacting with each other. I'm teaching you, you're teaching me. I'm studying different ways. All of it is so vital to the process of how you quickly retain information. So just keep that in mind too. So I wanted to just wrap this up by saying that I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen to my presentation. Thank you so much for joining me in the conversation today. And I look forward to continuing dialogue. If you have any more questions, concerns, my email address is listed right here on the slide, as well as my LinkedIn information. Please feel free to reach out to me if there's something you want to discuss, if you need a little bit more clarity in terms of conversational learning. And thank you so much. And you enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Chanel Daniels, for your amazing presentation.